Cockleshell Bay is a town near the sea with seagulls and sunshine and sound. There are shops that sell ices and bright-coloured kites that will fly from a string in your hand. There are white-painted houses along the seafront, and one's called the Bucket and Spade. It's where people stay and two children play with all the good friends that they've made. So meet Robin and Rosie of Cockleshell Bay. It was the middle of the day in Cockleshell Bay, and most people, like Robin and Rosie, had gone inside to have their lunch. So Mr. Ship wasn't working on his boat, and he wasn't working in his shed. Mr. Fingal had left Fury tethered to the stable and had given him his food in a bucket. Robin and Rosie had been helping Mr. Cockle in the vegetable garden, but now there was no sign of life outside the back door of the Bucket and Spade guest house. Well, no sign of life until Ben Gunn the seagull came waddling round the corner. He looked about as if he were a bit surprised that there was no one else around. Then he sidled towards the dustbin in the hope that someone might have dropped a crust or a bit of bacon rind. It was then that he saw the other seagull. Somehow or other, it seemed to Ben that the other seagull was staring at him. What's more, every time he squawked, the other seagull opened its beak at him in a very rude way. He tried to frighten off the intruder by flapping his wings at him, but instead of running away, the unknown cheeky bird flapped his wings back. Said Ben, and the other seagull put his head down and hissed back. That was too much for Ben. He took a peck at the invader, and their beaks banged together. They made a very strange noise, too, not at all like beaks. But the stranger still didn't run away. Ben glared at him, and he glared at Ben. He didn't behave like any other seagull Ben had ever met, and he was puzzled. In the end, he just walked away in disgust towards the vegetable patch. But when he looked back, the stranger had gone. He pecked at a cabbage, pulled at a carrot top, and thought he heard a worm wriggling in the soil. It didn't come out, though, and as he turned away, he saw it again. The strange seagull. How dare it come into his vegetable garden? It'd be eating his carrots next. He pecked at it, and this time it made a different noise. Peck, peck, peck. It was still there. Ben pecked harder and harder, and suddenly the second seagull just disappeared. That was too much for Ben. He turned tail and paddled off as fast as he could go. So he didn't even see Mr. Cockle as he came out to investigate a noise that Robin and Rosie said they'd heard. By then, Ben Gunn was well away. Hunting about, just by the side of the old boat, he found an egg, a very round egg, with funny markings on it. He waddled up to it and gave it a little push, and it rolled away from him. He followed it and tried to smell this funny egg, but as soon as he touched it, it rolled away from him again. He got a little bit cross with it this time, and when he caught up with it, he gave it a sharp peck. It ran away and jumped into the boat. Ben started to waddle after it, and then he stopped. He peered into the hole, waiting to see if the egg would jump out again. Perhaps it was hiding, playing a game. He looked at the darkness of the hole, and he decided not to go in after it. Being a seagull living in the open sky, he didn't really like little dark places. Besides, who knows what a jumping egg might do if it lost its temper? So Ben left it in peace and strutted further into the boatyard, grumbling quietly to himself. He took a careful look round on the ground near the door of Mr. Ship's shed, because sometimes Mr. Ship would eat his sandwiches out there. And when he had done, there'd be crumbs, or even a bit of cheese if a seagull were very lucky. Today, though, he wasn't lucky. No crumbs and no cheese. But there was a worm. It was a funny-looking worm, but Ben didn't care about that. He sneaked up on it so that it wouldn't wriggle away. But it didn't move at all. Then the big seagull pounced and heaved. It was a very thin, very pale worm, but it was very, very long. Ben tugged and heaved and tugged. He struggled backwards into the shed with the thing, and he struggled backwards out again. Up and down, back and forth, until the worm had wrapped itself around nearly everything that Mr. Ship had, inside or outside his shed. And then Ben realized that after all that, the worm had a funny taste that he didn't like at all. He dropped it, looked at it crossly, squawked at it, and wandered off to find something worth eating. So he didn't even hear Mr. Ship trip over the worm as he came out after his lunch, falling down with a crash.
Here, who in the steaming Sargasso Sea has unwound my ball of string? Ooh, wait till I catches 'em. I'll make 'em walk the plank, I will. I'll keel all 'em, I will and all.
By then, the seagull had found his way into the corner of the yard where Fury lived in a little stable. The donkey was still outside on his own, looking about him, and every now and then dipping his nose into the bucket and munching the feed Paddy Fingal had left him. Ah, donkey food. Now that might be just what a hungry seagull could do with. Better than a long, thin worm with a nasty taste. Fury looked up from his lunch and saw Ben watching him. He blew, feeling a bit uncomfortable, wondering what the seagull wanted. Ben knew very well what he wanted, and he waddled nearer to the bucket and nearer. Fury was, well, furious. Cheeky bird, trying to take his food. Ben Gunn had jumped back, but he edged up again, dodging a little bit this way and a little bit that way so that Fury wasn't sure which way he was coming from. And then he stood still. Fury watched him, and he watched Fury. And just as the donkey had decided that Ben wasn't going to try again, he did. That time, Ben very nearly snatched some of the donkey's feed, but Fury wasn't going to let him. This time, the donkey came after the seagull, snorting and blowing and ready to push him away. Ben didn't like it. He edged away, trying to get round the back of Fury. But Fury turned with him and then lurched at him to try and give the bird's tail feathers a nip. Ben spun round as fast as he could and pecked Fury on the nose. That made Fury really cross. He tossed his head and went after Ben, who dodged this way and that. And then, all at once, crash! The bucket of feed went over, spilling it all over the place. Ben Gunn dodged in, grabbed a piece of the feed in his beak, and was off. And that was the last that anyone saw of Ben Gunn that day. Although, when Paddy Fingal arrived to see what all the noise was about...
Behold, it's wonderful. What's going on here?
He did find a seagull's tail feather outside the stable.
Ah, well now, Fury, has that piratical old seagull been tormenting you? I might have known.
And Mr. Ship, scratching his head over the mess his shed was in, found a feather too.
Bless my barnacles if it ain't all that bloomin' seagull's doing.
Soon after that, Robin and Rosie found another feather by the dustbin. Dad, a feather! I think it's one of Ben Gunn's. Ben Gunn? What's he been up to, I wonder? Gosh, my glass frame. I wonder if he could have had anything to do with that.
Gosh, yes.
I wonder. But no one ever knew for sure. And soon, Robin and Rosie got down to another Cockleshell Bay adventure. But that is another story.